All right. Welcome, everyone. We are going to spend most of our time today having our fantastic panelists share ideas, success stories, lessons learned, but I wanted to start by quickly framing today's conversation. As a reminder, we're going to skip introductions. You can find everyone's bio in the conference app, but when I ask the first question, if everyone could just give their name, their title, and their institution so everyone has a sense for who's giving that answer. I'll kick things off. I'm Charlie Anastasi. I'm the Vice President of Revenue and Partnerships at Rize Education. To give you a general survey, though, of the participants on the panel today, on the stage we have 4 representatives of small independent colleges and the Chief Program Officer at an OPM. As you will hear, each of these panelists are using online for different audiences at different scales and with different value propositions. And we thought this panel diversity was critical because institutions are all weighing unique circumstances when considering the role of online courses and curriculum on their campus. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. Some small institutions never ran an online course before COVID. Others were early to online, but maybe they're starting to see demand diminish as new competition enters the space. Others are thriving, but those are the types of places that want to get stronger yet. Despite the diversity of panelists and institutions, there is something that unifies everyone up here, and that is that they have thought deeply and critically about how their individual institution or how their partner institutions can and should pursue online. And each of them knows, and we'll talk about today, that that deep thought isn't over. Success requires never-ending assessment and iteration. And we have all heard the horror stories of colleges that maybe rushed online, maybe to check a box on a strategic plan, only to find a very small number of students enrolling into that brand new, highly expensive program. Which leads me to the last point here, which might elucidate the session title of today's panel, David versus Goliath. Being small certainly does not prevent a college from succeeding online. In fact, I think it presents some advantages. But smaller budgets, smaller teams, they often require sharper focus, greater creativity, and relentless execution to succeed in this space. And so to kind of tie things together here, our time today is short. This panel is really aligned, and we talked about this in our prep session on 2 main topics. Demand generation. How do I make sure that I am not just launching online programs, but I am enrolling students into those online programs? And how should I evaluate partnerships? We happen to, at Rize, be a partner with some of these colleges, but what I think is great about this group is they partner in a whole lot of ways. And they've really thought deeply about how to partner, when not to partner, and how that calculus changes over time. And so in the remaining 37 or so minutes here, we know that no one is going to leave with the exact blueprint for success at your institution. But what we all talked about is we hope you leave with 1 or 2 or maybe more ideas that'll spark some further conversation as you make your way back to campus and start to really think about some of these things. So with that prelude, we'll jump into it. I want to start with the topic of demand generation. And Ron, you happen to be to my left here. And so one of the things that we talked about is a school like Tiffin, they're not going to outspend competitors with millions and millions of dollars in digital marketing. So you've had to be creative in defining and really pursuing the right market. So can you talk to us a little bit about that creativity and how you've found the right markets for Tiffin?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie, and good afternoon to everybody. It's the last session of the day, so I think there might be some fatigue, but we'll try to keep it going quick. So looking at new products and new markets, you've got the 4 Ps of marketing: price, promotion, place, product. You can go that route. We look at it a little bit differently from a who, what, and how perspective. So if you're looking at new markets for online, you can always take the route of new student, new product, existing student, new product, that 4-quadrant piece. One of the things that I have loved about the last 2 days is all of the ed tech companies. And what I feel and what I think is the hardest thing to do is predict what jobs and what roles and what functions are going to exist in 5 years. because that tends to lead you to what kinds of things to focus on. And if you're looking for new markets, new product is a really good way to do that. So if you take, artificial intelligence, which has been a pretty big theme of this conference, one of the routes that you could take to look at a new market is not the actual tech of AI, but what new roles and responsibilities are going to be needed in current and existing companies. More so, AI, I feel, is going to create a completely new economy. So what new companies and what new jobs are going to be out there? And then for schools like us, it probably doesn't pay to jump into the coding part of AI, the actual technology side of it, but to prepare for what does that technology do for current employers and in a new market. So that's the kind of really, it's a different look, it's a different approach. The hard thing is, with all these schools and time is an issue. How do you get time to think about stuff like that? So that's my take on it.
Yeah, and one of the things that you started to touch on there is the concept of what will exist in 5 years. And what that sort of reminds me of is Tiffany, one of the things that struck me about our conversation was that Averett has been serving the adult learner for 35 years, has been online for over a decade, but in that time you've had to reinvent yourself multiple times with this, what will exist in 5 years, will that still be relevant? So you mentioned being market-driven has really been a core piece of that evolution. Can you just talk to us and maybe give some examples about how being market-driven has helped you evolve and stay relevant?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Charlie. Just real quickly, I'm privileged to serve as president of Averett University in Virginia. So agility and being laser focused on the market has been critical to us. And when I think about even just the last 5 years, we have pivoted in three major ways in the online learning space. First, knowing that increasingly online learners want to go local. I mean, 60% of online learners within the last year have reported that they're going to school within 100 miles from their home. 34% of our online learners are saying that they want to be able to visit campus, so that personal connection is important to so many of our online learners. So that has been an area where we have been really, really focused. National brands have to advertise nationally. We only have to advertise regionally within a 100-mile radius. Also, national brands are having to go out and market over 200 programs. In our case, we're marketing programs that respond to regional impact, regional influence, regional needs. And so that has been a major area in which we've changed. Also, in terms of our programs, we have focused, again, on our backyard, what a new employers need, what a current employers need, and we're partnering with them to make certain that the programs that we develop respond to those needs. And we have formed partnerships with companies like Caesars Virginia, with hospitals, with AeroFarms, you name it. And it's also been about reimagining existing programs so that we're ensuring industry relevance, price, the needed support services, and that leads to the third area where we've really had to make a strong pivot. Adult learners today, online learners, expect Amazon-like service. We know that. I mean, we're all used to shopping online and getting our products delivered on our doorstep within 24 hours. Online learners are no different, and national brands have figured out how to adapt their technology to respond immediately. If we want to compete as smaller institutions, we've got to be able to do the same thing. So we have really focused more on career services, writing support, coaching, all of those kinds of things.
Amazing. And we started to touch a little bit there on the concept of regional versus national, and I'm going to turn to you, Eric, because CSP just announced CSP Global recently, and one of the reasons I was really excited to have Eric on the panel, because I'm not sure he'll say it himself, is at a time when a lot of colleges are having enrollment struggles, CSP has doubled over the last decade, and they just announced CSP Global, and they're looking to double again by 2030. And obviously, it's there in the name, global, but I imagine there's a lot of stuff that's local and regional. And so could you just talk to us a little bit about what have been some of those keys to success, and does that playbook change at all as you look to 2030?
Sure. Let's maybe I'll use the context of the title, right? So the way, and you address this, when you think about David versus Goliath, what did David have on his side? First of all, he had technology. He had higher precision tools that had a greater range, right? Second of all, his was offensive versus defensive. Think about our higher education institution, right? As we're driving down the road, we're listening to the navigation system. You know, next indication, turn or do a U-turn, right? And higher ed keeps wanting to go, and then the next turn, do a U-turn. So those are two pieces. And then nimbleness, as you just spoke to. When you think about those things, smaller institutions need to stay in that frame of reference. And as when we move into that frame of reference, then we're thinking about that nimbleness. The other piece is focus. You know, what is it we do and what is it we don't do? Great food service, good to have, but it's not our core business. So let's find good partners for that, even in curriculum and curriculum development. So staying nimble, staying that way. I think one of the behind-the-scenes pieces for institutions to think about is actually your own internal operating mechanics. And when I'm an HLC reviewer, and one of the things I always pay attention to is what are those faculty policies that allow for that nimbleness to occur or actually detract it, right? And there's three basic policies that I've kind of come to observe that seem to be those key variables. One, advancement in rank, tenure, and program approval, right? Because the first two tend to be mechanisms that faculty control each other over and against the advancement of the university, and those can actually detract and slow down that nimbleness. The third one is, how long does it take to get a new program launched? Federal government, state governments, accrediting agencies, they're already stacking on a lot of layers of time. But if we have internal delays, you miss that window of opportunity. As my campus hears me say all the time, opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, and that is definitely the case in our space today. You know, and then the marketing and recruitment, you spoke to marketing and recruitment, so I'll skip that. And then curriculum is the other space, and that's the thing that we've done with Rize, really, is we recognize we can't have the entire talent pool for the entire curriculum base that we want to do. So how can we partner with institutions such as yours and find ways to marry that together? And technology's enabled that. It allows us to deliver that. It allows us to deliver high quality, measurable quality outcomes that meet those learner outcomes, particularly around the scaffolding, to be skill ready and to be, you know, with power skills as well, to be competent in the workforce.
So I'm going to turn to you at the end there, Jeff, to really touch on maybe a different learner type, because I know that when we often talk about online learning, we immediately start to equate that with the adult learner or the, quote, non-traditional learner. But I think the lens you've taken at Adrian has been a little bit more geared towards what you've always considered the bread and butter there, which is that traditional residential student. So could you talk to us a little bit about how you're using online to really enhance the residential campus?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. So I am worried about the 18 to 22-year-olds. And that sort of Norman Rockwell painting that we've all sort of known to grow and love. Probably everyone in the room had it themselves in some way, shape, or form. And we want that for our children. And the idea of dropping your kids off at college and one parent's building the loft and the other's putting the socks and the underwear in the drawer and the tears at the door and the kids going off to the dining hall and classes and living in this community of scholars, I'm old-fashioned enough to think is important and is transformative and is something that really is important to both society and to the adulting of the children. And if these places continue to go away, which they have just over the last few weeks and really over the last few years, if you look at these schools going away because of the broken business model and the math problem, it doesn't work. And I've been in this for 18 years, and I love what I do, and I love the kids, and I love going to the office every day. But these places are going away. And it occurred to me not too long ago that the only way that we get out of this is by doing something that I don't think colleges have done real well over the last several years, which is to work together and to say, okay, can we drive down the cost? Can we make this more efficient? Can we be the first sector in American society that each year reduces the cost of education by working together? And so we pulled together a consortium of around 135 schools that are now sharing courses in key areas that allow us to start new majors for just a fraction of the old cost. So for example, at Adrian College, just over the last 2 years, we've started 24 new majors. Now you can imagine starting one new major, and I'm talking about in areas like computer science, cybersecurity, data analytics, public health, high-tech fields, healthcare type fields, business fields, without hiring one professor. So you can imagine, I've got hundreds of kids on my campus now who are coming in for these new majors. I didn't have to create the market, I just needed to tap into it. And so with all of these new kids, without having to hire new professors, it really has sustained us in ways that I could not have imagined. And so I would suggest that the future of higher education, Charlie, is working together. Now, to your point about online, yes, the students learn from these other schools. I mean, if I'm borrowing, classes from Tiffin, and, my kids aren't driving to Tiffin, they're getting it either synchronously or asynchronously online. But kids want that, especially post-COVID. I talk to students all the time, and I say, do you have a class online? Do you take any classes through our shared arrangement? Oh, yeah, I've got, I play baseball, and so I always take 1 or 2 during baseball season, so I'm not missing class. And so what I thought was not a good idea when I wrote about it in 2015, namely online classes, because I thought there was a quality issue, and anybody that could put together a PowerPoint could say, well, this is an online class, has really improved. And especially post-COVID, the online courses are fantastic. And when we poll our kids, they're saying, and I don't say this to my faculty, 62% of them are saying that the shared arrangement classes are as good as or better than the classes that they're getting on campus. And so the world has changed, and I think we've been able to change with it. And I think all schools are going to have to look at working together to bring down these costs.
Yeah, and I know that one thing that we've talked a lot about and thought a lot about is this concept of the hybrid campus, and that's maybe an overused term in some ways, but one of the things that we've seen at Adrian is just really going through that assessment of what should be done online and what should be done in person, because both have really valuable and unique value propositions. And there's certain things that probably should stay in person. And so sometimes the rush online is just a rush online. So, I've heard about the career service fair that let's go online. And it's like, well, was that the challenge? Was the challenge with the career service the problem you were having? Was it a problem of distribution online? So I don't think things should just go online to go online, but why are you going online, and how can that serve a unique value relative to what you're doing in person? And as with most things, I think the best answer is what's going to be a blend of those two. And I think this lets us segue the conversation a little bit. And in some ways, I think maybe people would expect that I'm going to ask the person representing an online program manager to talk about enrollment revenue and how we're going to drive top line, because that's what online programs are for. They're the cash cows. But you said something during our prep call that I really wanted to explore, which is you sort of lament the fact that online programs are always equated with revenue, because it should just increasingly be seen as a part of one larger integrated campus. And so how would you, Stephen, advise colleges to think about making online more than just a revenue driver, but a core part of what they're doing?
Yeah, well, first, honored to be a part of the panel with these institutions that have been thinking about the right types of strategic and tactical ways for their institutions to play in the evolving online space. And the calls that we've had, a lot of the things that they are talking through are the things that we talk to our partners about. And at Noodle, we work with a range of institutions. So we have small privates to flagship state institutions and everything in between. And one of the interesting parts of the conversation that's really been accelerated post-COVID is, Charlie, you're right, the construct of enrolling more students online to drive revenue was the narrative years ago. And I think in a lot of cases that's still a part of how institutions are thinking about it. But we've actually begun to talk with our universities and execute in a way that begins to get them thinking less about singularly driving top line revenue, but actually operationalizing for efficiency. So instead of having your marketing operation for your on ground operating over here, and your marketing and enrollment operation for your online programs over here, you're doubling your cost, you're actually working against yourself. How do you think about agility in such a way that you're actually putting everything under one operating umbrella, so the same enrollment advisors who are talking to potential students about your online programs can speak to anything that you have on ground? if you think about your marketing spend, which is a big part of the conversation in terms of cost of acquisition, increasing dramatically. I think, there's been plenty of statistics that have been circulated by our friends at Google and other places, but the cost for clicks has gone up plus or minus 50% over the last few years, which disadvantages smaller institutions with smaller budgets. And so you have to think about leveraging those dollars in different ways, not just operationally, but how you think about what you're putting in market, right? What's the right type of offering, and how does it map to Jeff's point and Eric's point, what students are looking for. They're not looking for a singular, I just want to be online. They're looking for that flexibility of, yes, I might want to take a portion of my classes online, but I might want to take a portion of them on ground. How is your registrar system as a smaller institution set up to enable that you're not creating barriers for a student that wants to do that, right? So again, it's thinking about it as one campus. One of the things that we talk about as a company, Home Depot doesn't care where you buy the hammer from, right? Whether you go to a store, right, or whether you go online. And so as higher education evolves and smaller institutions has to evolve quicker and be more adept in the ways that they think about that, it could be a little taboo to talk about consumer in the context of higher education, but that's the mentality that our smaller institutions are just, they're chomping a little bit more at the bit to do those kinds of things, and we're pushing and they're pushing us, and that's what students are going to want, and I think what the industry will require.
Amazing. And the Home Depot example, it reminds me of, if you're interested in this topic of hybrid campus, I know one thing that we read a couple of years ago that informed some of our thinking was there was a Deloitte and Strata report on the hybrid campus that was really good, and there's a shorter Harvard Business Review. I think Jeff Salingo was the main person driving that. So if you're interested in this concept, they do talk about that kind of consumer mindset and that idea of, they don't care if you bought it online or in person. You can sort of ship it back, or you can bring it in person, and you can move in and out of those modalities. And so it is at least a nice framework to think about what you experience elsewhere and how can you replicate those types of experiences on your own campus. So looking at the time here, we've done a lot on demand gen and starting to talk about how technology and other things can help out, how they can be, you can be nimble, how you can be agile, how you can have that laser regional focus. We're going to change gears here a little bit towards partnership and how to think about finding the right partners to help you kind of do the different jobs to be done on your campus. And maybe Tiffany, I'll come back to you, because another thing that kind of came up as we were prepping for this is at different moments, partnership has been right for Tiffin, and that same type of program might have made sense to internalize. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you have kind of weighed when is the right time to have that partnership and when do you need to move on and kind of try something else?
Happy to, because we clearly have had some real twists and turns in this area. And I really think at the heart of this conversation is really how to build capacity on our campuses to deliver online programs at scale. But I think before we can answer whether we do it alone or whether we have an OPM, I think we have to ask some bigger questions. We first have to understand why we're in the market. Then I think we've got to ask ourselves, is the online programs going to be an integrated part of our institution, or is it going to be an added benefit, if you will, that runs parallel to the institutional mission? I think when it comes down to it, what we have learned is it's not either or. That ultimately this is about timing for the institution, it's about context, and it's about capacity. That's absolutely what we have learned at our institution. I would say, too, that OPMs through the years, they have really diversified, as we know. So, again, it doesn't have to be exclusively all one or all the other. And I think institutional context is so critical. And we have to continually tailor and evolve our approach based on student needs and based upon growth needs of the institution. I will say there is a priceless value, I think, that gets placed on having the institution build its own capacity with subject matter experts in all the various areas, because that's building the institution of the future. But it doesn't mean that we have to do it all alone.
And I'm gonna borrow a concept that there's someone who works at CIC, the Council of Independent Colleges, named Joellen Parker, and what you just said there reminds me of this concept of assets versus access. And what I mean by that is what Joellen has really stressed to me is that historically we've thought about on our residential campuses that the only way we could deliver curriculum is if we owned the asset. If someone on our faculty was the person teaching that course or had developed that course. But if you change your mindset to, well, what access are we providing, as opposed to telling a student, well, we have to own the asset, all of a sudden you can be more scalable, you can be more efficient, and you can offer a much wider portfolio of options to those students. And so I really think that concept of figuring out, it's not just about who can we recruit to Danville, Virginia, but who can we partner with to really get there is a great idea. Ron, I want to come back to you, and really, because one of the things that makes Tiffin great to work with is you've got a lot of partnership muscle built, and that you partner with a lot of people in different contexts. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you have thought about matching the right partners to the different problems you're trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. And I think what Dr. Franks had said is the start to that, to answer that whole question, is what is your current capacity? All of us in here at the schools that you're in have probably really good content and a lot of it. What most of us struggle with is how do we package that, and how do we repackage that, and how do we resell that in different types of ways that appeal to different students in different markets. So one of the key things along with partnering, and you had kind of asked, how do you put different partners to different problems, is a cultural issue to start with. I think is some of these partnerships, and I think this conference is the great hope of collaboration, right? And so we all know that collaboration is important, but what do we collaborate on? So a couple of the things that higher education doesn't like is long tail solutions, and they don't like fast fails or failure. I mean, it's just a cultural thing in higher education that, and again, and it's a lot of administration as well. We in private education, we're kind of raised to be performance driven. We can do this quick, we can be nimble. Our culture is to work hard and get it done, right? And we don't have patience. So partnerships, good partnerships, require patience, and I know there's been some other conversation about the long tail of some partnerships. When do you break even? When does it become real? You know, there are times when that's a multi-year process, and if your institution and your administration can handle that, it's a good thing. The other part of this is an advantage of our type of schools. And this was said a couple of times yesterday and today that I've heard, is that we are a really good sandbox for solutions. We can be nimble, we can be quick, we can pilot a lot of stuff. What I love about, again, and I'll say it multiple times probably, is I love about this conference and the ed tech partnerships is that some of these partners are really small. So that makes us, a smaller institution, an A client or an A partner versus a huge partner that considers you maybe a D or a C level partner on their side. So when you're trying to fit solutions with partners, how do you want to be treated? Do you want to be that C partner or D partner or client? Or do you want the vendor relationship, or do you want a partnership where it is a true partnership instead of a vendor-client relationship?
So I wanted to add something to Ron's point about the construct of failing fast, right, and pivoting. And I think as we work with our institutions, and we have over 70 university partners, and one of the things that's been exacerbated post-COVID is the importance of not holding ourselves, yourselves, to constructs of research and trajectory and whatever the world was in 2018, 19, 20. The world is pivoting and evolving so quickly that if we don't, and again, smaller institutions are bit by it harder, right? Because they don't have the latitude that other larger national institutions have. And so that's one of the things that we've been pushing our partners on and pushing ourselves to push them on, is to be able to understand the reality that we're in now is different than the reality 3 years ago, and it's going to be different 3 years from now, so you can't wedge yourself. And so that construct of being open to failing fast is recognizing it and moving in a different direction is critical.
Yep. And just one quick last thing, I think it would be a mistake, I think, to look at a one-to-one correlation between a problem and a partner. Many problems are going to require multiple partners to solve that. Stephen and I had a really good conversation yesterday about a potential or I guess it's not a theory, but a potential partnership. What would that look like if there were multiple layers of a partnership that were all win, 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 win? So it's a financial solution to a career services problem that attracts students to an institution. And it was just a fascinating discussion because it was a win-win-win all the way around. So I wanted to make that point. I didn't have it in my notes, but I wanted to make the point of there's not that one correlation. You're not going to get one partner to solve probably completely that problem.
Yeah. Before I change the topic, I'm curious, does anyone else want to add in on just general partnership dynamics, what to think about before we pivot?
So at Concordia, we actually have, we break the mold. We actually have 5 OPMs and third-party providers. And it does require incredible management skills and transition and partnership, but it does work. And as long as the partners are aligned and you can leverage them and you stay on track, that works. And when they don't, and people's missions and visions shift and change, you have to know where those KPIs are and when to remove those. And I think higher ed is not very good at the trimming game, right? We're always good at adding other things. We need to think about, no, this is it. In fact, I was at a school recently, and the philosophy is we're going to do an 18-month runway on this new major, and if it doesn't hit these KPIs, we're going to come back and revisit it based upon our KPIs, enrollment, retention, graduation, financial metrics. And getting to that discipline is going to be critical for large and small institutions to survive.
If I could add one thing, and it comes back to, I think, the fail fast point and how quickly the world is moving. One thing that I know as a partner working with institutions sometimes gets us a little frustrated, candidly, is we'll go and we'll talk to someone and they'll say, well, we're doing a program assessment over the next 18 months. And so come talk to us in 18 months, and then we'll kind of see what, we'll then maybe set up a committee to do a 6-month evaluation of what's next. And in some ways I get it. It's the realities of trying to kind of like push through some of these legacy structures. But if some programs, again, are maybe going to be tweaked or changed or different, I mean, if you're evaluating the market today, is that still going to be relevant? And so I think all of us need to be supporting each other. I think we know that you need to be patient and need to be supportive, but I really do think that idea of maybe it's not even failing, but like moving quickly and understanding that the world has changed. So how do you speed up and how do you set up the right structures to know when to sunset? Because I think that's another piece that we talk a lot about is we want to make sure that our programs are flexible so that if they're not working, there's an off-ramp, and you can sort of sunset that and move on to the next thing. We have about 6 minutes left, and so there was one other topic that we talked about a little bit on the call that I want to broach, and that's the concept of building the right team to actually go get these things done. And it came up a little bit on a panel that I was listening to earlier, and maybe, Jeff, this was definitely not in the notes of things that I asked you to prepare for, but because I know you really well and because we work together, you talk a lot about the idea of single-threaded leadership as something that's been really important in driving success in new initiatives, whether it was athletic programs or new online programs that you're bringing. So I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit to the audience about the concept of single-threaded leadership and how that's helped get success of the initiatives you've launched.
Sure. So guess I would say it this way, Charlie. You know, we're standing at a really interesting inflection point in higher ed, right? We talked a minute ago about how we really do want to preserve all of what I said earlier, the Norman Rockwell painting. I think if I asked, and I won't ask, but I think if I said, hey, put up your hand if you went to four-year college and made great friends and have wonderful late-night study sessions and profs that you just, still want to stay in touch with, everybody's hand would go up. And if I said, if you want that for your children, put up your hand, and everyone's hand would go up again. So we have this amazing thing that is really uniquely American in a lot of ways, that we want to preserve as much of that as we can. And yet, the change that needs to take place is tectonic. I mean, it's huge. In other words, no longer can I say to my CFO, hey, bring in a few more weddings in the chapel in the summer because we need some more revenue or some more football camps or, it doesn't work. Presidents need millions of dollars annually that we can count on. And I'm the one that meets with the finance committee of the board of trustees. I'm telling you, it's for real. It's existential. And so what we've done is we've landed on this, that the answer to that is a hybrid learning experience on campuses. We need to do what every other sector of society has done for many years, which is to leverage the internet. And we haven't, at least at Adrian College until recently. But once we decided, yes, this is the way of the future, I picked one person, I hired one person, I put him at the dean's level, and I said, you are in charge of this. You're in charge of filling out these 24 majors with students. And if you can't get, 10 kids a year for computer science, and you can't get 10 kids a year for, cybersecurity and public health, then you don't have a job. It's like a basketball coach. You can't bring any kids in. I mean, you've got no team. And so, we do have a point person. It was an extra salary. And yet, if he just brings in 3 kids, that pays for him, and everything else is gravy. So single-threaded leadership, I know it's a big thing with Bezos. I've read some of those books. Yeah, 8-point person, this is your responsibility. The one and only thing that you're responsible for is bringing kids in with these new majors. And so that's how we're doing it. And it's been very effective because sometimes we say, well, it's his problem, it's her problem. Start pointing fingers. No, this is your job.
I would just add, role and responsibility is key, and we do that across every space. Whether it's a coach, you've got an enrollment goal, you've got a retention goal, you've got a graduation goal, and you've got a fundraising goal, and it'd be nice if you won a game or two. Well
said.
And the same thing is in other offices, right? The student services offices. What are the KPIs? What are the things you're doing? What are they not doing? Are they just servicing the green service students, or are they servicing the students that are in the red, yellow categories as assessment? And that's their focus, that's how they're evaluated, and they are charged to create that and empowered to do the things that are necessary within that space.
Maybe we'll get a couple quick hitters. Stephen, you've worked with a lot of partners, you've seen a lot of different partnership teams. What are some of the things that when you're looking to partner, you really want to make sure you got the right team in place that makes it set up for success? What does a good partnership look like?
Yeah, one of the things that we pride ourselves on, and as we've grown over the last 6 years or so, is something that Ron hit on earlier, which is this construct between partner and vendor, right? This is hard, okay? Building online operations, strategy, thinking about institutions and where they want to go and trying to mesh with them. This is hard, and we're in it as a company because we believe in the value of higher education, and we believe in that mesh between what industry can deliver with higher education and impact more students. But if you approach partnership like a vendor, it's not going to work. It's too complex. There are too many moving parts. And so what we look for is the ethos from the institution around that, right? We tend to shy away from partners that look at us or institutions that look at us like this is kind of easy, right? And so that's, I think there's all kinds of needs assessments and capacity analysis that can be done, but just generally speaking, that's the way that we think about it.
Any other points that anyone on the panel wants to make? We're counting down here.
Yeah, I just for a second address the team thing, and I think everybody agrees that finding the right people with the right skill sets and putting them in the right spot is super, super important. But I think if you were listening today over the Stage X lunch, a comment was made that you can't scale a human. So it's super, super important that you are looking at processes and systems, because online is supposed to be a scalable entity or a scalable product or whatever. But if you don't have your processes set up and your structure set up to be scalable, it's going to take you 100 people to enroll 1,000. Whereas if you've got proper pieces in place, you could have 10 people enrolling 500 or something, not withstanding the numbers, but you get the point. So it's important that you're looking at that from a perspective of getting the right people in the right place with the right skills, and then putting the support systems and processes and policies in place that support that scalability that you're trying to achieve.
All right, now the timer is going in the other direction, which I think means that we are over our time. Again, thank you everyone so much. 3 things. We talked about demand gen. We talked about the importance of focus. We talked about partnership. I loved what you said, Tiffany. Ask the why before asking, are we partnering or not? And then a little bit about it's so important to have the right team to do it. So thank you all, everyone, for joining us today.